Good afternoon. We're all happy and healthy and ready for and prosperous. Here we go. Ready for some informative dialogue and discussion. I'm Ron Lindahn. I'm the Minister for Wayfarer and Unity up here in Dillard. And this is my good friend, Dr. Bart who practices down in Clayton. And we're here to talk to you this afternoon to share some of the things that we talk about every week. You may see us having long lunches on Saturday and Sunday and long discussions, and mostly what we talk about is how does this amazing body work? What can we do to make it more healthy? And more importantly, what can we do to tell our friends and family and loved ones how they can stay more healthy? Not only what is the important information that we can share, but also how do we motivate people to actually do some of the things that we know how to do. We know what's important, but we don't always follow through with that. So we're going to talk about several things this afternoon that have to do with understanding how the body works, what's going on in here, and the choices, what we can do to be able to make a difference, to be able to stay healthier. When we're healthier, we feel better. When we feel better, we're happier. And when we're happier, we feel better, we will live longer. So our objective here is to make sure that you don't have to go to the doctor. Bart says he's too busy. He's got too many patients already. So if we can keep people out of the doctor's office, then we've done our bit here.
Okay, well, Ron did a good intro, and we'll move into the show. We'll try not to get too technical, get things that have meaning for you. The keynote of what we're trying to present is balance. And the body is like a hummingbird, that its wings move extremely fast. You can't see them. They go in two different directions, as the body has always two opposing systems. So what we try to do is to try to understand how balance can be created, and also how imbalance is created. So you, each one of you, can figure out how to create the right balance for you. We always start talks with disclosures, and this is a standard medical practice. We don't have any benefit from this talk. Nobody is sponsoring us for this talk. We represent nobody for this talk except ourselves and our desire to make a difference. Give Ron
So we've been talking for about 2 years on doing something like this. And the cost of this, we invested in the cleaning fee for the school. The school was very kind in letting us use the auditorium. And so we have a couple $100s to pay for that, and some promotion around town, some printing. But this is all our investment. This is a gift. So there is no... We're not looking for patience. We're not looking for anything except for you to feel better. That's our objective here. So that's our...
Engage some information.
And to share the information. And we get so excited about all the cool things that we're learning about how this works that we just really want to let everybody know.
Now, we have a good turnout. We're really pleased with this turnout. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because that's your own private, personal medical issues. But I dare say that at least 50% of this audience has different types of arthritic pains, maybe a weight control problem, maybe a little blood pressure when you go from a certain age, cholesterol, and diabetes, which I'll say that this county is equal to most of the counties in the United States now. That's 21% diabetic. Of that 21% diabetes, 50% don't know it. And then there's another 20% that will be a diabetic within 10 years. So one of my motivations, and I'll give this a little background, because these are all stories that we tell. In medical school, which I was in med school in the 1970s, we spent a total of 4 days in 4 years of medical school on nutrition and health. 4 days. The rest was dominated by physiology and pharmacology. So I was motivated. How I got interested is for my own health. When I started getting some of the blood work on myself, I thought, I'm going to have problems. So that led me into wanting to change my diet, change my patterns, so I wouldn't go through some of the disease processes. So that's really what motivated me to get interested in health and nutrition.
And I'm going to we're going to talk about stress in a little bit because it's such an important part of the story. And I'm going to give you a personal example of what happened for me as far as stress goes. So here we have a picture, a graph that says the quality of life on the upper part. On the length axis, we have the age. And what happens for most people, unfortunately, is the quality of life starts off pretty high, and then as we get older, it gradually declines, and it gets worse and worse, and we have more bad days than good days, and finally we're living with pain, constant pain, joint pain, considerations. So here's the picture. Now, what we want to do is to recommend that if we make good choices, if we follow guidelines that we know are useful for us, that we can change this curve. We can change the curve so that we have quality of life all the way to the end and then a very quick demise.
And we're not going to change your we're not going to change your genes, okay? So what we'd like to have is you be so old when you die you don't care. Or you get to that age where you say, it's time to go, I'm fine, you know? Now, a little digression, in the between 1850 and 1890 in England, where people were eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day, this is a working class people, and they had 10% of the diabetes rate that we have today, and they had 10% of the cancer rate that we have today. So we're fed the line that we're actually healthier today than we were in the 19th century, when we're really not. Those people lived up until 3 or 4 days before they died, and then they passed on. We know this because of the hundreds and hundreds of autopsy reports that are in the British Museum that people have gone back and looked at. So really, we're taught that we're a very healthy society, but maybe we're not.
So we aren't. There's one other little part that makes this a little more interesting, and that is that people weren't living nearly as long. So, you know, when you get to be in your late 50s, early 60s, and you hit that wall and it's time to go, that's a lot different than being in your 70s and 80s and 90s. And this is the problem we have, is we are living longer, and as we live longer, the accumulation of bad habits and bad choices sort of catches up with us. And so we end up with folks that are having problems. But you don't have to. There are also a lot of people who are living into their 90s and they're functional and they're bright and they're healthy and they're out there making a difference. So we have that as a possibility.
And in that process, you have to understand every day you live is a day of balance. You're trying to create balance in your life, whether it's the food you eat or the exercise you have or the thoughts you think, the amount of stress you have. These are all factors that enter into your ability to stay balanced. When you get out of balance, then disease happens.
And you can see in that bottom picture, there's a bunch of rocks that are balanced. And we put that in because we wanted to emphasize that everybody's balance is not the same. What's balanced for me is not necessarily what's balanced for you. We are all individuals. It's amazing. We have 7 billion people on the planet, and you can recognize the difference between any two of them. There's no two that look exactly alike. Even identical twins, their parents can tell the difference. So every single one of us is unique. We have a unique blueprint, and because of that, we have a system that requires balancing, and we need to figure out what that is for us. So one size does not fit all.
And in this talk, we're going to basically touch upon several areas, and this is each balance that a person has in their own life. We'll touch on food, the gastrointestinal tract, exercise, sleep, stress, toxicity, and mind-body-soul connection.
Okay?
This slide speaks for itself.
Be open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brains fall out. And this, sorry. And this points to one of these things that we have to remember, and that is that a lot of what we know ain't so. That we move forward with assumptions about the way things are and about the way things work, and a lot of times it's just not true. When I was a kid, they had this food pyramid. When I was in high school, they taught us this food pyramid. And then 20 years later, they came along and they said, well, that was an opinion, and now we have a different opinion. There's a different food pyramid. And I remember when I was in my early 20s, I went to a talk on nutrition by the top people in the world, Pablo Arola and some of these great nutritionists that were the superheroes. And one after another, they sat there and contradicted each other. One says high protein, the other says high carbs, and, you know, back and forth. And so for years, I have watched the confusion that's out here. There's a lot of disinformation. And so we're going to try to, you know, wind our way through that forest a little bit and get a little clarity on what's really going on around here.
And this has to do with belief systems. If we took 500 years ago, most people believed the earth was flat. And that was a popular belief. If you thought the earth was round, then that was a heretical view.
You mean it's not?
And even with the universe, I love, this is Ron's picture, I love, as far as understanding the planets went around the earth. The earth didn't go around the sun. The planets and the planets and the sun went around the earth because that's what you saw in the sky. What you saw in the sky had to be real because you saw it. Well, it wasn't real. What we believed, and I'm saying we as a culture, what we believed from the time of Aristotle was that physics, the way the world works is that Earth is heavy, so it's at the bottom. And water floats on top of Earth, so that's the next. And then air floats on top of water, and fire floats on top of air, and then there's this ether, this space out here that has all the planets in it. And based on that understanding of physics, we went for almost 2,000 years. All the development, everything that happened was based on this was the way things work, until Newton came along. And he completely turned that upside down. Then, only a few years after that, 100 years, we have Einstein who comes along and turns Newton on his head and says, well, yeah, but that's an opinion, but there's a lot more going on here. Things don't work like that. So we keep refining our knowledge, our understanding, and we have to keep pushing the envelope. What's happened in the last 15 years in medicine, in real medicine, in functional medicine, is we have started to learn what's really going on, how this complex system works, and how interactive all the parts of it are. And because of that understanding, we can make better choices about what we do with it. So the Earth that we know today is round, and we know it from all the science that we have. We also know that the universe is a very complex area. So the idea is what we think is right today. That's the best guidelines that we have to go on. We have to understand that this knowledge will change in the future. It is my belief now that we could make a huge difference in medicine in our country if we really understood the fundamentals of food. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there are two aspects I want you to walk away from this talk from. Food from the point of view of carbohydrates, that is low glycemic and high glycemic, and food from the point of view of good fats and bad fats. And you make your decision based upon those two simple fundamental distinctions. So, that's the one, yeah. So what we're asking you to do is maybe rethink, although I think most of the people in this audience are pretty open-minded and willing to accept new ideas and are also interested in making changes. So we're asking you to rethink the concepts that you live by in the sense of food and exercise and nutrition, but it falls under the general heading called lifestyle medicine. And that's where I think we're really headed, and I think that has tremendous value for living a healthy life.
Absolutely. So if we're informed about what to do, and we do what we know we should do, we can't possibly fail, and we will be healthier and feel better.
Good. Now, we're only going to provide a small amount of information, this 1 hour, a little bit longer. It's really the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge amount of information that's under the surface, but we've tried to distill out that which we feel is the most important thing for you all to take home with you.
And we'll also give you some reference to some books and some other information, places that you can follow up to be able to design a lifestyle and a plan that's appropriate for yourself.
We're not going to get technical, although I love physics and I love the technicalities of physics. We'll keep it simple, and I'll stay away from that area. and try to look at the entire elephant. In medicine, we have so much compartmentalization and called siloing, where we have specialists in gastroenterology and cardiology and nephrology, and we sometimes lose sight of the bigger picture. It's a bigger picture that we hope to give you today, and things that you can do to make your life better.
And to remind you that we're looking at wholeness, that as long as you're addressing the knee pain, the joint pain, the arthritis, or as long as you're addressing this piece or that piece, you're missing the point. The whole thing works together as a whole. Everything affects everything. And so we need to keep that big picture instead of looking at just the details.
And there is an elephant in the room that people don't see. And I see this with my colleagues all the time. If I talk about glutathione, or I talk about dysbiosis, or probiotics, or things, it's like a blank stare I get back. What value are they? Well, they have real value to yourself, and you'll see we hope to make some differences and changes. So there is a huge elephant in the room that you are going to have the responsibility to find yourself, because you won't get it from the mainstream medicine.
And it requires that you look at yourself and look at your own habits and your own lifestyle and your own choices to find where that elephant is in your life. See, what is it that I'm missing? Where am I missing the point that I can make a big difference? And I guarantee you, everybody has these. Everybody has these. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Mark Twain. It's what you know for certain that just ain't so. Okay? So we're going to move past that.
This is about choice. It's your choice. You can make these choices. What we're trying to do today is give you some information, point you in certain directions so that you have the ability to make the right choices.
So I want to start off here. This is a 1940 Chevy. Now each one of us has a vehicle. Each one of us is issued this self-assembling unit, this mechanism, this vehicle, when we're born, before we're born. So we end up with a little cell. It puts itself together. Not only is it self-assembling, but it's also self-regulating. It knows how to keep everything in balance. It has its own little thermostats for all the pieces, parts. And if you leave it alone and just give it the right maintenance, it takes perfectly good care of itself. So this is a 1947 Ron. And that's a 1947 Bart. I got the sporty model. And for years, for many years, I've been, focused on being healthy. I know a lot of what we're talking about, but I didn't always do what I know. And so this conversation about stress, we look at the systems in the body, and we have two main systems. One of them is called the sympathetic nervous system. The other one is the parasympathetic. You don't have to remember any of this. Don't write this down. Sympathetic nervous system is the gas pedal. Parasympathetic is the brake. So we have a gas pedal and a brake. Now, this whole idea of stress got to be popularized back in the 30s by a doctor named Hans Selye, and he said, when you step on the gas pedal, everything in your body goes into this fight or flight mechanism, and we call that stress. So he named that system as stress. Well, guess what? I like stepping on the gas pedal. It feels good. This is how we feel excited, enjoy life. We go to the movies and we pay 15 bucks to see the big Gravity. We went to see the IMAX and watch Sandra Bullock get float around in space. And there's times there where you're white-knuckled, hanging on the edge of the seat, where you feel that adrenaline pumping, where you're worried. This is all the gas pedal. This is all the sympathetic nervous system kicking in and allowing us to feel good. But then there's a brake, and that slows us down, allows us to relax. The system resets itself. The immune system comes in, fixes what it needs to fix. Everything works perfectly as long as we balance the gas pedal and the brake. So I was running along, and about 12 years ago, I'm doing what I normally do, which is a lot of stuff. But I have my ministry, my church here. I meditate every day. I've been doing this for 40 years, so I make sure, and I know this is a good de-stressing process. So So I'm doing that. So I know that, you know, because I'm meditating and because I see pretty good nutrition, that I'm bulletproof. I'm, you know, immortal. Nothing can happen to me. I've got a strong constitution. But I keep the gas pedal to the floor. So I'm staying up late. I have an irregular schedule. I eat sometimes and don't eat sometimes. I'm driving down the street. I was running part-time managing a gourmet coffee company, so I was making a trip to Atlanta once a week, to Highlands once a week, in between designing and building furniture. And for fun, I would come home and get the angle grinder out and carve wood and do little sculptures. So I had noise all the time. When I'm going down the road, traveling 70 miles an hour, I've got music going, blasting. All this stimulation, the senses are constantly being stimulated, one thing after another, never stopping. That's the gas pedal, okay? And so what happened was, one fine day I ended up with this terrible pain in my gut. I thought, what is going on? I've got an infection, so I'll take an antibiotic and get rid of that and get back to work. Well, the antibiotic cleared it up for about 2 weeks and it came back. And when it came back, by the time it came back, I had lost, what, 25 pounds. I was 135 pounds, skin and bones, and I thought, well, I'm a yogi, and, you know, look at this, I'm in really good shape. No, you're really sick. You know, my wife and her best friend forced me to go to the doctor. The doctor forced me to go to the hospital, and he said, you're really sick. You need to be on IV drip. You need to get this out of your system. And so I came back from the hospital, and I was so weak that it took me 3 months before I could even go back and do any work. And it took me, and I started on a program of balance. I mean, really focused balance. I changed everything. And it took me about 2 years to get my health back to being strong and robust by being attentive and focused on balance. So I know that it can be done. And I know that it's possible to delude yourself into thinking that you're doing all the right stuff when you're really not. You know, you're really pushing the envelope. You've got that gas pedal down all the time, continuously, and there's no time for breaks. So we need to have that balance. It's important nutritionally, it's important in our lifestyle, it's important mentally, in the way we're looking at ourselves and the world and our jobs. Everything has to be balanced or we're going to pay the price. It costs if we don't do this. It costs in suffering and pain.
I had a similar story to Ron's. In fact, 5 or 6 years ago, I got very sick with an infection in my leg. And my wife told me she was either going to call the emergency crew, dial 911 and have me picked up, or I was going to have to voluntarily make a choice, which I reluctantly made a choice because I hadn't seen a physician since I was in Vietnam. So I learned a heck of a lot from that illness, and it made me open my eyes and say, I've got to make some changes in my life. So sometimes it takes these catastrophic events for us to make these changes.
So if we keep the foot on the gas pedal and we keep overstimulating the nerves and keep the senses going full time, 24/7, what happens to our vehicle is it turns into a wreck.
Same model.
That's the same car.
Same car.
But the good news is that we also can have the opportunity to keep our car, keep our vehicle in good shape, even to enhance it, to improve it. I feel better, I have more energy, and I feel better than I have for 30 years because I'm taking better care of myself. I see to a routine. And so it's important we can do this. And my routine may not work for you, but you can find one that will work for yourself. That will see to your proper nutritional balance, your proper lifestyle choices. I go to bed early and I get up early. And I continue with my meditation practice and I eat healthy, and that gives me the energy and the stamina to do all the fun things that I really like to do, like this.
There's a huge story about whether it's called nature or nurture. That is, we're born with a genetic predisposition for certain problems. It's like bullets in a gun. But we're the people who pull the trigger. So we may have a genetic predisposition for something. Doesn't mean we have to experience that pathological process if we don't pull the trigger.
That genetic code, by the way, this is a recipe book. So your genes, the DNA, it basically copies a little piece of, makes a little molecule that is how the cell talks to itself and how the processes work. Well, those genes are a recipe, they're a program, and if the program isn't activated, if the recipe isn't cooked up, then you don't have the problem. So if you people in your family always had a predisposition for diabetes, if you don't give it the food, if you don't create the environment that allows that to manifest, that gene won't happen and you won't have that diabetes. So when we say nature loads the gun, it sets up the recipe, it loads your computer with these little apps, these probabilities, but you're the one that has to pull the trigger. And the trigger gets pulled by the choices that you make. It gets pulled by keeping your foot on the gas pedal. It gets pulled by some of the things we'll talk about nutritionally.
When I remember as a child, we used to watch Jack Benny show, and one of the classic really impressed me was some burglar came up in the back of Jack Benny, put a gun in his head and said, "Mr. Benny, your money or your life." And that's where Jack Benny goes, not really sure. So this is the same story. It's your nutrition, your management of your lifestyle or your life or your disease. So we're saying that you have the choice. So the first subject we're going to talk about is inflammation. Everything that happens in your body that's bad is a result of inflammation. Whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's diabetes, whether it's arthritis. Inflammation is the root cause of everything.
And this is probably, if you don't take anything away from this talk, except this is one of the most important things. Inflammation is the bottom root, the basis for all the problems that come up. Inflammation creates heart disease, creates arteriosclerosis, starts the process of neurofibular tangles that lead to Alzheimer's and dementia. All these things are related to this inflammation. Inflammation is the body working perfectly to protect itself. Inflammation is where you turn a mechanism on where the body says, I see an invader, I see a problem, and in order to protect myself against this problem, I'm going to take this strategy, I'm going to make this move. So this inflammation is something that your body is doing to itself as a result of the environment that you create for it.
And inflammation is another form of rapid oxidation. So you hear about things like antioxidants, you hear about toxins that create an inflammatory response in the body. We want to try to reduce the amount of inflammation. Inflammation is okay in small amounts. Now, this is a lead article in Time magazine in 2004, and this is 2013, 9 years ago, where they talk about inflammation and all the potential causes of inflammation. In the world of medicine, inflammation causes plaques in your arteries. It causes you can see in these pictures, you have these fatty plaques that occur, and that's what causes strokes. A little piece of this plaque breaks off, floats into the brain, creates a blockage of the arterial tree in the brain, and you have a stroke. It also creates chest pain. It creates heart attacks through similar mechanisms by decreasing blood flow. So inflammation creates the pathology in the body over a prolonged period of time, which then creates the illnesses and the diseases that we face.
Okay, so how's that plaque start?
It starts essentially from an irritation. They call it, it's a theory of injury. The arterial wall gets injured. And the main culprit that injures the arterial wall is insulin and glucose. And then, by eating a poor diet and not selecting the right fats, this injured arterial wall then accumulates these fats. And this is what your LDL and HDL and all those things that you learn about from your physician are about. They give us an idea of how fast these plaques are being created. It's these plaques that create the pathology that you see. We are as old as our arterial system. So if you want to look at somebody's age from a sense of how long they're going to live, look at their arterial system, because that is a high indication. And what controls that is the lifestyle factors that you can change and control in your own lifestyle.
So what he said is that you get a damage in your artery. This damage comes from too high a level of glucose, that's sugar, and insulin, which is the hormone the body puts out to deal with sugar. So in your bloodstream, there is an ideal level. Your body runs on glucose, on sugar. So it has an ideal level, a thermostat, that controls the amount that's going through its optimum. When it gets too high, then that sugar becomes a toxin, it becomes a damaging element. And so the body goes into this amazing response to try to deal with it, to keep the sugar down so it doesn't damage the arteries. Some damage is happening because it can't deal with it quickly enough to be able to keep those levels down. And we keep putting more into it, keep adding more and more, so the body has to work harder and harder. And so we get these little lesions in the arteries, and those little lesions then become the center for building these plaques, and this becomes the center for hardening of the arteries and for things that float off into strokes. And these are real pictures. That picture on the bottom, that's what it really looks like inside of one of these occluded arteries.
So if you continue with your current lifestyle, you go to a physician and he gets blood work and he says, oh, you need to be on such and such a drug. One of the classic drugs for glucose issues and glucose control is Lindahn, that you see up here. Now, there was declared in 1999 47,000 deaths as a result of this drug. Well, that's, the National Institute of Health tells us that the adverse drug reactions for drugs are 90% not reported. So if this is only 10% of the population, we're talking about 500,000 people who have serious adverse drug reactions to these drugs. So there are toxins with beneficial side effects, but if you're willing to make the lifestyle changes, you don't need those drugs. 90% of the people don't need them. You use these drugs to reduce the risk, but the drugs have inherent problems to them.
And because the body is self-repairing, not only is it self-regulating, but it's self-repairing, if we get on the right diet, if we get on the right lifestyle, if we stop staying on the gas all the time, and create balance, over time, eventually the body will repair itself, will fix itself. This body that you have is a process. It's not a thing. It's like looking at the river out here. We look at the river looks the same every time we look at it. But the water that's going through that river is different. And what's going through, what makes up this body, the molecules, the cells, the tissues of this body, are constantly changing. And they're changing really fast. The metabolic processes that are going on are incredibly fast. We can't even look at them, they're so fast. So this system is like a river flowing. It's a process. And that's why if we start to move in the right direction, this process will bring itself back in harmony with balance. It'll start to fix itself. It'll repair itself without the medication, without the drugs, without the heavy interference with the system. Because when you take this drug for your arteries, you're also giving that drug to your liver and to your intestines and to your brain, and you know, they may not all need it. They may not be useful for them.
But if you're not willing to make these lifestyle changes, you need to be on the drugs. Now, the first subject we're going to talk about is food, which is the biggest control that you have. Of course, everybody likes sweets. When we say somebody is nice, we call them sweet. When we say somebody is not nice, we sometimes use the word bitter. What's interesting is bitter foods are the foods that have the best nutritional value for the body. Sweet foods have the worst. And we live in a society of sugar, a society of sweets. This is what makes the arteries hard. This is what creates the strokes, the heart attacks, on a long period of time.
And creates inflammation. You think this nice, cool ice cream, how could that create inflammation? How could chocolate be bad? See? But what happens is it starts the process, and it can interfere both in the arteries, or it can start messing up what's happening in your gut, and then we end up with big problems. We'll talk about more in a minute. So the things that look good and are nice are okay in little small amounts, right? We ran into a fellow the other day in Ingalls at Starbucks, and he said, you know, this is my dessert for the week. I started this program of having only desserts on weekends a few months ago. And so over the period of, what was it, 5 months?
Yeah.
5 months, he said, I've lost 15 pounds and a couple of inches on my waist by just having desserts on the weekend instead of every day. Simple, you see, simple change, but he can see a profound difference just from that. And those are the kind of things that we need to be paying attention to.
So this was from the state fair. These guys have put this is a fried potato that's spirally cut, put around a piece of sausage, and salt.
And then deep fried.
And deep fried. Okay. Now, I probably taste wonderful, but as far as your health, not what you need. Now, we have actually evolved as a species. Our genes haven't changed since 250,000 years. And if you look at the monkey going up to the human, our genetic code has changed very, very little. But we have physically changed in the last 50 years. To where we can see if I go to the high school or stand out in front of Walmart and I look at the people coming in and out, we have an obese population. We have a population that is headed towards diabetes. The kids that are born today are not going to live as long as the baby boomers. That's serious. And that has to do with our food source and how we're sourcing these foods out.
I dearly wanted to take a picture when I came out of Ingles today of the lady that was in the next aisle over with her shopping cart, because it was full of Coca-Colas and a big pie, and it was all sugar. It was a whole shopping cart. It must have been $50 worth of sugar that was her shopping. And I thought, wow, what a testament to what we're talking about here.
My wife came down to visit me when I was practicing in Louisiana, and she was pulling her cart behind into the checkout line, and the woman in front of her looked around and looked at her cart that had vegetables and fruits in it, and her cart was full of lard and pork rinds and Wonder Bread. And she said to Bonnie, "You ain't from around here, are you?" So that is, now, in medicine, we look at a thing called a BMI. And a BMI tells us our risk for a heart attack. And we're shifting more towards the right side on this. And that's based upon your physical weight and your height. So there are ideal BMIs that we look at in medicine and try to encourage people to make those changes. You'll get this in most physician offices, but what you won't get is the counseling you need in order to make the right change. That's your responsibility. You're going to have to do this on your own, or at the end of this lecture, we'll give you some suggestions. So we have a new species that has evolved. It's called Homo sapien obesus, which is a shorter lifespan than a current.
And it's continuing to move in that direction. We really have a chronic situation, a chronic condition in this country where we're moving further and further down this road, down this path. Somebody asked me today after church, they said, you're talking about being optimistic about the future, not letting the prophets of gloom and doom influence us too much, but what are we going to do about the environment? And I said, what you do about the environment is to pay attention to yourself and pay attention to how you're eating and what you're doing, because that has an effect. That has an effect on everything else. So if we want to make a difference in our life all the way around, we need to start thinking about how we're taking care of ourselves, and how we take care of ourselves will be reflected in how we take care of the environment. I mean, right now we're eating a lot of sugar because it's cheap. See, what they don't tell you is sugar's cheap because we figured out how to make sugar out of corn. And the way we make sugar out of corn is to use oil. So we use a tremendous amount of oil to create the pesticides, to create the refinement, to create the processing, and to turn this corn into high fructose corn syrup, which is really cheap now. It just costs a lot of oil. So it's to the advantage of people who are making money, that are greedy, to keep this system going and to keep feeding us more and more sugar, which is addictive. The more you get, the more you want. And so here we go down this road. And we want to turn the ship in the other direction. We want to move in a more positive way.
In China 15 years ago, there were hardly any fat people. Maybe Mao was fat, but the working class were not fat. Nowadays, they're starting to increase weight and they're starting to become diabetic. They're starting to have the Western world diseases that we experience here in America. Now, the tar baby in this whole situation, this whole story, is sugar and fats. So when you touch that tar baby, it's really hard not to get stuck, because it has to do with neural circuits in your brain and addictions. The addiction to sugar is greater than the addiction capability to some of the opiates, or most all the opiates, because it's very, very insidious.
So that means that there's a chemical in your brain that makes you feel really good, dopamine. And when you get extra sugar, the brain runs on sugar, when you get extra sugar, it turns on this process, which is also related to stress, which turns on the dopamine, and it gives you a big squirt of, wow, I really feel good. Not only that, but when we start to look forward to sugar, we get dopamine. So we get this anticipation turns on this response that we have that dumps the dopamine. So we start to feel good thinking about a Sunday. We start to feel good thinking about where that next sugar rush is going to come from. Okay? So this is something that becomes self-propagating. The tar baby, in case of any of you who were around back in the early days, Brer Rabbit came in and, the fox came up to the tar baby, and the tar baby wouldn't talk to him, and so he smacked the tar baby, and of course he got stuck in the hot tar. And so then he goes, "You rascal," and then he smacked him again. And the more he smacked, the more stuck he got, until he was just stuck in a big ball of tar. And that's the problem, is that we start to go down that road and it becomes self-propagating.
So our enemy, our biggest enemy, are sugar and fats. But sugar is so ubiquitous in everything that we have to be very conscious of it. Now, there was an idea that maybe we should make sugar cubes that look like this. The other is Wonder Bread, and I think they got the name Wonder Bread as a simple carbohydrate, because when the first person who ate it, they wondered what it had in it. One of the edicts for bread, if you want to eat bread, rye is one of the best breads to eat. And there's a friend of mine, Mark Hyman, says if you can take a loaf of bread and stand on it and it doesn't crush and collapse, it's probably good for you.
And it doesn't turn into a ball and you can bounce it. So anyway, by the way, sugar, the body runs on sugar. Sugar is not our enemy. The brain requires sugar to run. So we're not saying that sugar is all the way bad. We're saying that the amount that we consume is out of balance. It's out of proportion. And understanding also the things that we eat that turn into sugar. The liver's job is to turn a lot of what comes into the body into sugar, the fuel. So a lot of people don't understand that when you have corn and white potatoes and some of these things, they turn instantly into sugar. This creates a high sugar load in the body. So we want things that are slower burning, not so fast, not pushing the gas pedal down so hard.
And this creates quite a toxic load for the body. Just a slide to give that a concept. And then the idea that sugar is cheaper than heroin, but it's just as addictive in the long run. Now, here's a learning lesson. What does the word glycemic index mean? It means simply they're foods with low glycemic index, that is, they get turned into sugar very slowly, and they're foods that have a high glycemic index, they get turned into sugars very rapidly. 15 years ago, or even today, it's taught that we look at calories, not the glycemic index. Glycemic index is everything, because this determines the food you eat and how fast it gets turned into sugar. You need sugar, so you want a constant, slow supply of sugar coming into the system. This is why, and I'll say this later, it's better to have 5 small meals a day than 2 or 3 large meals a day. And it's better to eat foods that turn into sugar slowly. All of the simple vegetables, whether you carrots or Brussels sprouts or broccoli, those are carbohydrates. They get turned into sugar, but they get turned into sugar very slowly.
So we want to remember now this glycemic index. If you take a little pine shaving, you take your Christmas tree and you throw it out there in the fire pit and you light it, it's going to go up instantly. You get a lot of heat very quickly and then it's gone. But if you start a fire and you get some big logs in there and you get the fire going and then you just put a log in every once in a while, you get heat. It's slow and it continues over a period of time. This is what we're talking about. The body is running on this fuel, and if we dump fuel in it that burns really quickly, we get a big rush, we feel good, and we have a lot of energy, and then it's depleted. And then we have that dead place where we're out of energy. And so we have to have some more sugar to get back up. And we go through this cycle, boom, boom, boom. We want to be able to create a long, slow burn so that the energy is coming in over time, and we can just maintain that.
So here's a list of what we recommend. Oops,
it doesn't like that.
Go forward, go back.
It's just skipping. Oh, here we go.
Okay. All this information we're putting on a website that Ron's put together. But these are some of the fundamentals. You can read them, but these are foods that get turned into sugar very slowly. These give us a constant trickle of sugar into our bloodstream without this constant rush.
And we will have this on our Live and Prosper website that we put together. We're going to put all this information, the slideshow on there, so you can check that out later. And just by the way, this says apples, berries and cherries, barley, grapefruit, legumes, that's green peas, beans, peanuts, soy nuts, almonds and walnuts, oatmeal, not instant, tomatoes, unsweetened plain yogurt, and most vegetables.
And it's just a pictorial of those materials that have a very low glycemic index.
You don't see anything in a box. You don't see anything that's processed. Okay? See, so this can be one of the things that you start to use as a determination is how much processing has been done to this food before it got to me. And the less processing, the more healthy, the more nutrition that you will be getting out of the food.
Processing is a means to prolong shelf life, which is a business decision, not a nutrition decision. Now, the foods with a very high glycemic indexes, that means they get turned into sugar very rapidly, are the things that you would know. Okay, the common things like candy and
cookies, juice with extra sugar, white potatoes, chips, most breakfast cereals, sweet snacks, white bread, Idaho potatoes, and hot French sundaes. So these things are all high glycemic index. They turn into sugar really quickly.
And these aren't bad foods. These foods just get turned into sugar, and they do bad things in your body. So we're not against these foods. We're just saying if you want to eat them, you run a risk of being sick. There they are. The bagels, I used to think bagels were good. And then we have good fats and bad fats. That's sort of the other lesson. So we have the sugar, and then we have the question of fats. Years ago, it was said that all fats were bad. Well, we've learned that not all fats are bad. There are some fats that are essential and really important. So the fats that are good need to be known.
And not only are all fats not equal, but fats are absolutely critical, important to maintaining cellular function, to be able to maintain the homeostasis, the good function of your body. So all the cell membranes are made out of fats, and we have to have these fats. But we have to have the right kinds. So if we put the wrong kinds of fats in the body, we clog up the system and create toxins. The list here is avocados, cold water fish, like salmon and tuna, flaxseed oil, grapeseed oil, nuts, nutberries, olive oil, preferably cold pressed, not processed, safflower oil, cold pressed, sesame oil, seeds, pumpkin, sunflower seeds, and coconut oil. Coconut oil is one of the magical best things you can possibly use. I mean, you can eat it, you can cook with it. It has antimicrobial properties. It is a really good thing.
So here's some pictures that Ron just talked about. The right kind of oils like avocado, the right types of nuts and grains, barley being one of them. Actually, and then the bad fats.
Bad fats. We got cakes, cookies, donuts. Donuts. Wow. Yeah, you're talking about some serious fat there. Potato chips, deep fried foods, lard, margarine, cheese, red meat, shortening, poultry skin, and trans fats, partially hydrogenated oils. So these things, fats, we love fats. Fats taste good. You know, you get a little fat and salt, just straight fat and salt. I mean, you put a potato chip around it just so you can get it into your mouth. But wow, we love this stuff. So again, the question is retraining our taste buds, retraining our senses, so that we learn to love things that are better for us. I keep almonds, that is organic, whole, unroasted, fresh almonds. I keep a bag of those, and when I get into work in the morning, I get in early, and I have a little latte, and then I have a handful of almonds. I just stick them on the desk in front of me, and I munch on a few almonds. And then a little later, I munch on a few more almonds. And so I have almonds I'm eating a little bit all the way through the morning. It's a good, healthy fat. It keeps me, it's a protein. It burns very slowly. I don't get hungry. And so for me, this is a strategy that works very well. You will find something that works for you as well.
So the idea is frequent small meals during the day and making the right choice of sugars and fats. Hydration is important. And the hardest, if you really want to be well hydrated, the rule of thumb is 1/2 ounce of water. This is not iced tea, sweet. This is not sodas. This is not lattes or coffee. This is pure water. 1/2 ounce per pound of body weight, which is a lot of water. Okay, and most people don't drink it. And what I see as a doc is, I see their BUNs and creatinines, which reflect renal function, kidney function, gradually creeping up as people get older. And it's usually because of lifetime of dehydration.
Then we have the conversation about, and Bart tells me every week, he tells me, I've got these patients, and I sit there and I try to explain to them that you have to eat healthy, you have to actually cook some food once in a while. And their response is, it costs too much. I can't afford to eat healthy food. It's cheaper to eat processed food and to eat, you know, at McDonald's. And it's not true. It's not true. There are several studies, national studies, that have been done, and I stole some pictures off the web. So here you have a picture of some deep fried potatoes, frozen potatoes you can just throw in the oven, or you can get this array of healthy foods.
That's a $10 equivalent.
And here for $20. And one after another, it shows that what the trade-off is, what you can buy. And you can just Google this and you'll find a bunch of different studies that have been done that show the difference in the prices. These are the same things, and they'll give you so much more value, so much more nutritional value, so much more bang for your buck. And so the conversation about it costs more to eat healthy is not true. The place that does cost more is that you have to cook it, that you have to actually sit down at the stove and make things up. And this can be fun. See, this can be an adventure. It can be really something that you get into as a pleasurable activity, and it helps to put the brake on. This is a non-stressful thing. This is actually something that helps the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps the relaxation part because it's something that you can do in a pleasant environment, and you're doing it for yourself so you feel good. You feel good while you're doing it, and you feel good afterward while you're enjoying it and eating it.
And in summary, you have a choice. You can eat foods with bad fats and high sugar content, or you can eat select foods that have the right fat content and the right sugar content, what we call low glycemic index. And there's a huge turnaround in health. I've had patients who have tried making these types of dietary changes, and within 3 weeks, their arthritis pain goes away. Now, I could have prescribed an anti-inflammatory, and their arthritis pain would have gone away temporarily, but not permanently. So we're trying to do things that make differences in your lives.
And we have people, Val was showing me someone who's one of our students from a couple of years ago in Australia, who started on a diet because she was having so much joint pain, so much arthritic pain that she was wheelchair bound. She couldn't walk. She couldn't get out of the chair. And so she started this diet, which was basically cutting out all the sugars, cutting out all the inflammatories, cutting out the cheese and milk, and going on a pretty straight vegetarian healthy diet. And she reported on Facebook that Facebook was her support community. And so on Facebook she would say, okay, it's been 4 weeks, it's been 10 weeks, it's been 12 weeks. This lady got completely off of her medication, her anti-inflammatory medication, her pain medication, her arthritis medication. She can get up and walk. She's functional. She feels better. And this is after 12 weeks. 12 weeks of just staying on this diet. She has a life again. So it's profound what can be done.
So it's your choice. As we showed in that gun, you pull the trigger.
This picture up in the upper left is our local Ingles. That is one side of the soft drink aisle. There is another side and then a whole thing down the middle. And I was going to do a calculation on how many tons of sugar is actually there. But it is a lot. It is a lot. And it's amazing to me that it's cheaper to buy a Coke than it is to buy the same bottle of water. You buy a bottle of water, and then you add sugar and caffeine and a bunch of stuff to it, and you get it for half price. How's that work?
So, this is a fundamental book. If you want to get started, Mark Hyman has done a really good job in this book. It's a bestseller book in the New York Times, and if you could only read the first 4 chapters, it would get you started. This book has a lot of recipes in it. He's got a wonderful website. This is what I've pushed a lot of people towards. This gives them some fundamentals that they can look at. This is also, we'll reference this on our website.
We'll have these things on the website in about a week. We need some time to put this up. By the way, Mark Hyman has his website, and on his website you can sign up for his email, and he'll send you an email either once a week or every couple of days that has another tip, another hint about how to eat healthy. Mark Hyman is the head of the Functional Medicine Association, so this is a real doctor who's looking at a holistic approach to health. Not woo-woo outside the medical purview, but this is from science, from research saying, we understand what's happening here. We understand what happens in the gut. We understand that the gut has a brain that talks to the rest of the brain, that turns on hormones that create responses. That when the gut's not healthy, it starts to create an unhealthy environment, and that unhealthy environment leads to inflammation and problems. Depending on what the weak part of your system is, it's the one that will get attacked first. And so Mark is a really good resource from real science, from a real medical background. And so I checked, and I think it's just markhyman.com.
Yeah. Another popular book called Wheat Bellies. And this is a simple thing. If you cut out wheat in your diet, you have a high probability that you'll lose weight and you feel healthier.
Now this is partially because in the 1950s they hybridized wheat. And they made wheat so that it grows faster, and also in the process it turns into sugar faster, creating a much higher glycemic index for wheat. So things that are made out of wheat can have problems in 2 different ways. One is this high glycemic index. The other is the gluten molecule in wheat creeps through the leaky gut, because now our ecology, our garden down here is out of balance. So molecules of gluten get inside the body, and the body says, we don't know what to do with this. This is an invading thing. And so we create an inflammatory response to try to deal with these gluten molecules. And that inflammatory response can take place in the arteries, can take place in the heart, can take place in the irritable bowel syndrome, it can take place in all over the arthritis and joints, just depending on where it's weak. So this is how this inflammatory response starts. Now, because we know this, and we've been talking about this, last November, December, I thought, okay, well, if we're going to be recommending for people to start, looking at wheat and reducing the amount of wheat they eat, I'm going to do this myself just to see. I'm fine, I'm healthy, I feel good, but I'm just going to try and experiment and see how this works. And with the help of my beautiful wife who cooks the food in our house, and she's been a good sport about going along with this. So I reduced the amount of wheat that I eat by 90%. I'm not radical. Every once in a while I have some pasta or something that's not rice pasta. Every once in a while I have a little bit of wheat, but mostly no wheat. Now, the effect for me has been losing 15 pounds and three sizes of belt jean. So I went from the 33-inch waist, I had to go out and buy new pants when I got to 31, and then it kept going down to 30. So this is my personal experience without doing anything else, without working at diet, without changing anything else, but just staying away from the wheat. And I can tell you, the people I talk to have the same experience. It's like it just melts off. It's like your body really doesn't like what wheat is doing to it. And so just reducing, just saying, okay, I'm going to cut down on the amount is going to make a difference, and you'll be able to feel that difference within a couple of months. Just stay with the program.
If you really want to go on the fast train, and there's a fellow I know actually, he did a surgical training at the University of Georgia, and did a postgrad at the in Ohio at Northwestern, I think in Chicago. Cardiothoracic surgeon from California put on the next one. And his name's Steve Gundry. This is a modified Paleolithic diet, which is really for the athlete and the high-end person. Extremely effective. He has a series of 500 cases. Of that 500 cases, normally 25% of those cases in 2 years would have required some type of open heart surgery. In those 400 cases who went on his diet, only 2 required open heart surgery. He was able to prove by coronary angiography that these plaques dissolved. Very similar to what Dean Ornish had shown 5 years earlier. So you can make a change in your body, but with this type of program, it's very strict, and it's a much more difficult program. So the different degrees to which you can change your eating patterns.
And Gundry said, his story is really pretty interesting. He said this guy came to him that weighed 350 or 400 pounds. He was huge, and he was a candidate for bypass surgery. They told him, if you don't get a bypass, you're dead. And nobody would do the bypass surgery because his arteries were so thin that they couldn't actually do it. And so they wrote this guy off. So 6 months later, he shows up in Gundry's office, and Gundry is overweight. And this guy says, please, will you do this bypass? And Gundry says, well, let me see the background. And he goes, well, you know, it can't be done. And the guy says, look, I've been doing this dietary thing, I've been working, please check it again. And so he goes back and checks, and sure enough, this guy has improved tremendously over this 6-month period, and he's able to go in and do the bypass. He says in his talk, today I wouldn't even do that. With what this guy was doing, the improvement he was showing, he didn't need that bypass. He would have continued to completely heal himself. But as a result of this, Gundry said, I've got to find out what this guy's doing, what happened here. And so he put himself and his father had Alzheimer's, I mean, bad Alzheimer's. He put his father on this diet just as a last-ditch effort. And his father's brain cleared up, and he came back. He got his father back.
In fact, when he and his father are at a store, they think that his father's his brother.
So his story is like, you know, this is personal experience. And what he did was he just went back to the Paleolithic diet. He said, when we first evolved on the savannah, we were eating like 200 different kinds of vegetation. You know, whatever the hunter-gatherer could come across that looked like it might be edible and didn't make you sick, we would eat it. And we had a lot of variety, and it was mostly dark green stuff. And occasionally a little bit of meat, when you could run something down. And he said, if you go back to those dark leafy greens and a little bit of healthy meat, and just eat nothing but that, your body's going to come back into balance. So that's a little radical, but it works.
It's interesting. If you do these diets, you don't have to worry about volume. You can eat as much food as you want if you eat the right kinds of foods.
You'll get a tub of organic spinach. You know, you can stick it in a blender and juice it. You can saute it. You can, you know, boil it. Do whatever you want. But get your whole tub of spinach every day. You'll see a difference. You'll be full.
Okay, so just a couple words about the gut. Putting the gut into balance. I love this slide because really the health starts in the GI tract, and it starts in your ability to excrete, have a good bowel movement. So the rainbow ends at the outhouse. You can have your GI tract is like a garden.
That's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is the gut. So, and here we have a garden that's overrun with weeds, and we have a healthy garden. What happens is you have this bacteria, you have a garden in your gut, and these bacteria are your friends. They are what breaks the food down. They are communicating with your body and telling you what the environment is like, whether it's good or bad. And as long as we have a healthy garden in our gut, we feel good, and we're healthy. And the nutrition, the nutritional value of the food goes into our system in a healthy way. But when we get that out of balance, how does it get out of balance? Take some antibiotics. Antibiotics kill bacteria. And when they kill bacteria, they kill the good stuff and the bad stuff. So now we've just wiped our garden clean, and who gets to come back in and populate it? Maybe the bad guys. Maybe we end up with weeds. Maybe we end up with a garden full of weeds that are not efficient, that don't help us process, that allow these little spaces to happen in the gut, so we have a leaky gut syndrome. And so through either malnutrition, bad nutrition, or through antibiotics and medications, we start to mess up our garden. And when the garden is messed up and we have too many weeds, things start to go bad.
A couple of years ago, I ran across a study of 100 kids. Half got probiotics and half didn't. And they followed them for a year. It was a double-blinded study, so nobody knew who was getting the real stuff. They broke the code after 12 months, and the kids that got the probiotics had a 70% reduction in physician visits. Pretty impressive.
That is, they were at school more, they were healthier, they didn't get as many colds and fevers and flus. They were healthier because of probiotics, because of just taking some healthy bacteria and replenishing the garden with good stuff.
Just to give you an idea, now probiotics the big pharma companies are looking at probiotics really seriously. Their first step in maneuver is to make them basically non-over-the-counter products. So there's a huge move among the pharmaceutical companies now to make probiotics by prescription only. The only reason they're doing this is they see billions and billions of dollars of profit. This is real. And this is a real fight now that's going on behind the scenes at the FDA.
And this, by the way, this bacterial load, this bacterial garden that you're carrying around with you, Bart tells me that if you took the DNA, all the DNA from your bacteria, and you took all the DNA from your cells, your human being cells, you would be outnumbered by what, 10 to 1? 10 to 1. So there's 10 times as much DNA in your garden as there is in your actual body. We have a lot of bacteria that's our friend. Okay? So all bacteria is not bad, but we want to make sure we keep the friendly, good garden going and keep the weeds out.
Okay, so here's some simple suggestions to improve your diet. And
don't eat anything that your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. That's from Michael Pollan, who wrote the Omnivore's Dilemma and several of these books where he's researched, where our food really comes from, which is kind of interesting. And shop the peripheries of the supermarket. They put the good stuff out on the edges. And it's amazing to me how we are becoming much more aware of the importance of this healthy food. Even Ingalls in Little Raven County, here out in the middle of nowhere, we have a huge section of organics, both in the produce section and throughout the store. And we have a bigger and bigger section growing of gluten-free. Handcrafted is a bunch of frozen gluten-free. But also if we go in the cereals and the baking and all of a sudden we're getting all this gluten-free. People are becoming aware of the fact that there are problems and that the solutions for those are what they're paying for. So we're going to see more and more and more of this as we go forward. How to improve your digestion? Choose organic, non-GMO foods whenever you can. GMO are genetically modified. They're genetically modified so that we can spray a lot of pesticides on them without killing them. They're mostly Roundup resistant is the genetically modified foods. And the body is not designed to be able to process these efficiently. Don't microwave your food. I remember years ago in Ayurvedic, this is a doctor from Eastern philosophy, used to say that when you microwave your food, you just jiggle the atoms and the molecules so much and you make them really angry. how they get hot. So it's much healthier for us to cook our food on a stove, use gas or electricity, but the microwave is not necessarily a healthy way to cook our food. And avoid the additives and preservatives. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. If you look at ingredients on packages, there's a lot of stuff in there that is really far out there. You have to be a chemist to understand what's in there.
If you look at the ingredients in a Twinkies package, it's probably 600 words. And I would say a third of those words you wouldn't recognize for the chemicals.
And Michael Pollan actually, somebody did a book called Twinkie, where they actually went back and they researched everything that went into a Twinkie and where it came from. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And Twinkies have a shelf life of like, what, 100 years or something? They're designed to last forever. But that's not a way for you to stay alive for a long time by eating Twinkies. Those preservatives will not preserve your life.
Okay, the next major area next after food is exercise. And exercise should be considered like a drug, because not a drug, but like a lifestyle change that you can do that can make a huge difference in your life with all the benefits of exercise. And there too,
we want to be able to move the body, and it's one of those things where literally if you don't use it, you lose it. Literally, if you don't use it, you lose it. This body, remember, it's a process. It's constantly remaking itself. It's constantly responding to the demands that we put on it. And so if you don't use muscles, the body says, well, why should I put energy in keeping muscles around that we're not using? That's not very efficient. And so it doesn't build muscle. And the more muscle we have, the better we are able to burn those calories. And so it becomes easier to stay healthy if you have some muscle mass. The other problem comes in our bones. If we're not actually working our bones against gravity, if we don't have some weight training, then the body says, well, why should I keep spending all this energy recreating this infrastructure to hold this body up when we're not using it? We don't need it. One of the biggest problems astronauts have when they come back after being in space for several months is their bones have gone away. I mean, they don't go away completely, but they've lost bone mass and they have to go back into weight training to get those bones to work, to be built back up. So and as we get older, the calcium gets sucked out of the bones, it gets used in other places, and it's not replaced unless we demand the body to replace it by using it. So we have to get out and work the body a little bit. Otherwise, we end up with brittle bones, we lose our balance, we fall, and we break things, and it gets worse and worse. The body doesn't repair itself as quickly, and it's a slippery slope. It's that thing that we talked about in the beginning where the lifestyle starts going down, down, down. We want to stay healthy. And in order to stay healthy, exercise. And exercise doesn't have to be hard. You can get cardio exercise by just going for a walk. You go just walk half an hour a day. I got a dog, again, last year. I call it my organic exercise machine, OEM. And so I have an excuse to go out and walk the dog. We go walk for a mile. We go over actually to the old Fruit of the Loom plant. Nobody is there. If you walk all the way around to one end of it and all the way back, it's a mile. It takes about a half an hour. So this is a great form of exercise. You're outdoors, and hanging out with everybody. And so we can do that, or if you're not into being outside, get yourself an exercise bicycle. I like a rowing machine myself. Something to get the body moving and to do it a little bit every day, or at least every other day. Better to start off with a small exercise routine if you haven't been exercising. Do a small exercise routine that you will stay with every single day. And then you'll find you feel better and you will be able to build up. If you start a big, heavy exercise routine, at the end of the week, it's like there's an excuse not to do it, and then pretty soon it's easy to just completely ignore it. So better to find changes that you can make that are small, incremental changes, and build on that. But be regular. Stay with it.
Exercise turns fat into muscle. Muscle does not create inflammation. Fat creates inflammation. So you're actually reducing the amount of inflammation you have in your body. The simplest exercise you can do, the simplest, Because everyone in this audience, 90% of everyone in this audience will have back pain at some time in their life. Okay? If you do one simple thing, learning to sit up straight, you won't have back pain. People who don't lean against the back of their chair, who sit up, okay, you don't have to sit up straight. People who sit up straight, constantly exercising their back muscles. So this is a simple thing, and the other idea is just walking. Walking is important. So there's two, there's muscle training, and there's the cardiovascular. And so you want to increase the heart rate, but you also want to get the muscles working. Right. And then there are group activities like Tai Chi and Qigong, and things that you can do as a group, which are important.
Hatha yoga, there's lots of yoga available around the community. These things are easy and very, very helpful for your health.
So here's weight training, which is good. Sleep, and then next major area that we
sleep is a $10 billion industry. People have so much problem sleeping, and at some point everybody has a little problem sleeping, but it's a chronic problem. People don't get enough sleep. And one of the reasons they don't get enough sleep and they don't sleep well is because they got the gas pedal all the time. So this overstimulation of the nerves creates this problem going to sleep. I can't shut it off. You know, it's been running so hard. So finding a strategy to allow us to sleep better is critical. The research has been done. There's tons of studies that have been done over the last 20 years on sleep. And one of the bottom lines is that if you don't get enough sleep, even missing 2 hours in one night, the research shows that this is going to create a problem in your immune function. It interferes with the immune function. It creates a problem with your ability to think. There are actually, when you sleep, the brain replaces its glucose load. It replaces its fuel. That's one of the things that happens during sleep. When you don't get enough sleep, you don't replace the fuel. When you don't replace the fuel, the glial cells start to dump out some little molecules that shut off the neurons. They literally shut down your brain. You can't think. This is the brain's strategy. It says, okay, if you're not going to do this, then I'm going to make you do this so we can get the sugar back and get the glucose back. And so this is why you find that in the afternoon sometimes you get to the place where you can't focus, you can't think, because the brain is literally shutting itself off to force you to take a nap, to get replenished. The other thing that happens, this amazed me, this blew me away. When you don't get enough sleep, is that the brain starts to produce a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hormone that makes you feel hungry. So if you don't get enough sleep on a regular basis, you're going to be hungry all the time and you're going to be eating. The reason the brain does this is it wants its sugar. It wants its fuel. And so it keeps telling you, eat, eat, eat. I don't have enough fuel here. And you don't have the fuel because you're not sleeping, because you're not allowing it to refresh itself. But you're dumping too much fuel into the system here. So the brain, with no sleep, creates this process which adds to this diabetes, which adds to this compulsive eating and eating sugar. I need more sugar. The brain's telling you it needs more sugar, but it needs the sugar from sleep, not from the sunlight.
The next subject, we're almost done with the talk. It's a simple subject, but very complex, on hormones. Hormones are really one of the most important aspects that need to be balanced in the body. And I like this slide because men really don't have a lot of complexity of hormones. That is a real challenge. When we went away from equine estrogens to more natural estrogens, the national cancer rate fell by 4% of the breast. Okay. And that's because you can't measure equine estrogens. You can't measure the Premarin, the drugs that women were taking. So women could get very toxic on it, and toxicity is a direct correlation between some of the metabolites of estrogen and breast cancer. So here's three simple rules. If you have to have a hysterectomy, it's reasonable to replace the biological hormones up until your normal menopause. After menopause, if you demand to take hormones, you can do that, but there's a small risk, even with the bioidentical hormones. You're better to go with a natural life cycle. A life cycle that has to do with the natural patterns that occur in women's bodies. So it's a lot more complex than that, but just it's important to understand hormones do have a play, but secondary to diet and exercise.
And the one factoid that Bart has told me several times that again, it just blows me away. He said if you took a little cup of estrogen and you dump it in Lake Michigan and mix it up really good and then take a cup out, the dilution of estrogen is about the amount that's running through a woman's body. We're talking about such a minuscule amount that makes such a huge difference. It doesn't take much, okay? Then we have this extra little bit of information that says these plastic bottles that our water's coming in are leaching out a substance, a molecule that's the same shape as estrogen. So it's turning on, it's a hormone that's turning on a response in our body that's just like when we're taking estrogen. So, so we start to see effects of this in the population. It's not really healthy either. So it's really creating problems.
It's a real problem, some of the municipal water supplies, with the amount of estrogens that are in those water supplies. Think of it, you have a 0 then a decimal point, and take 9 zeros or 10 zeros out to beyond the decimal point, and that's the amount of active estrogen that's in a body. It's called estradiol, which is really the key thing. Stress is really an important part. We save that for last, because stress influences everything. If you eat a poor diet, you're going to get stressed. If you don't get enough sleep, you're going to get stressed. If you don't know how to deal with the stresses of life, a little stress is good, a lot of stress is bad.
And this comes back to the gas pedal. This comes back to the fight or flight response. Your body, when you put the gas pedal on, your hearing, your sight, your senses all become more acute. This evolved so that we would be able to protect ourselves. When the saber-toothed tiger was coming, you wanted to be able to hear it, to see it, and you want to be able to mobilize the body to run away if you need to. Or, if you see the beautiful redhead over there, you want to run over and get to her first before the rest of the guys. So both from a standpoint of running away and also from getting what it is that we want, we turn on this stress response. We turn on the accelerator pedal, okay? And so glucocorticoids flood the system, and we do things that are efficient for the moment. That is, we don't have to be digesting food when we're running away from the tiger, so digestion shuts off. We're not thinking about reproduction and sex when we're running away from the tiger, so that part goes away too. We are focused on the things that are important for survival. So digestion, immune function, taking care of the maintenance and repairing the body, that's very optimistic. That assumes there's going to be a tomorrow. We don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. There's a tiger. And so we don't bother with the immune system. We don't bother with digestion. We don't bother with reproduction. We turn on the system and we put the gas pedal down and we go full speed ahead. Right. The problem is that the mechanism that puts the gas pedal down is related to what's happening from the senses, the input that's coming from the world around us, and there's an operator, there's like a receptionist that sits in the brain. I call it Amy, it's the amygdala. And the amygdala is eavesdropping on all the things that come in through the senses, and all of our opinions about what comes in. We have opinions about, what kind of ice cream we like. Pistachios, not so good. Strawberry, great. And so I have a different response to that over this. So the amygdala is watching everything that comes through and is listening to the stories that we're telling ourselves about what's happening. So I listen to the news, and the news commentator says, the stock market just dropped 50 points, and I have stock. I go, man. So the amygdala goes, stress, turns on, drools some hormones on the hypothalamus, gets the glucocorticoid pumping, and I've got the same response that I had if the tiger was standing right next to me. So I got the gas pedal down. And then they tell me something else, and then I think about this, and I worry about this, and I have this anxiety. Every one of these things is stepping on the gas, stepping on the gas. So I never put the brakes on it. So I'm constantly riding that stress. That sympathetic nervous system is constantly pushing, and this is where the problem is. This is where the imbalance comes. Is that the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what we imagine. Doesn't know the difference between what's really going on and what we're making up as a story about it. So dealing with stress, the response to stress has a lot to do with what we're thinking, how we're thinking and how we're acting. So we can stress the system through bad nutrition, through bad diet. We can stress the system through being in the wrong place. We can stress the system through over-exercising, through too much stimulation, just too much noise. We can stress the system by thinking about things that are pessimistic and that are worrisome.
And we can stress it by the classic burning the candle at 2 ends.
And not getting enough sleep, stress, more stress, more stress.
Things we can do, simple things that you can do.
Things that we can do to reduce that stress. I've been teaching meditation for 40 years, so I highly recommend meditation as a practice. If we're not into meditation, which is becoming very mainstream, and there's been a lot of science, a lot of research around what happens, the physiological changes that happen as a result of just sitting. Meditation is just sitting and not thinking. It's being aware and conscious, but no storyteller, no narrator, no color man that's sitting there telling us what's going on the field. We just stop all that and just rest. And that's meditation. So that's not a hard thing to do, but even easier is just to watch the breath. It's just to notice the breath. The breath is with us, it's self-regulating. We don't have to make it go faster or slower or do anything. We just observe the breath, and we will automatically turn on the parasympathetic, the relaxation response. Now, if you want,
blood pressure goes down. If you do a simple thing, I tell my patients, take an egg timer, set it for 15 minutes. Sit in a place, in a good posture, and just set it for 15 minutes, and during that 15 minutes, do one thing, and one thing only. Just breathe. In for 5, out for 10. If you'll do that for 15 minutes, you'll find yourself in a different state when you started than when you finished.
Did you hear that? In for 5, out for 10. When we breathe in, we are breathing in and turning on the sympathetic nervous system. We're putting the gas on a little bit. When we breathe out, we're turning on the parasympathetic. We're putting the brake on, just a little bit. And so if we practice breathing and breathe out just a little bit longer than we breathe in, we're turning on the parasympathetic. We're relaxing the body. And what will happen, you can take a blood pressure cuff, check your blood pressure, and then just sit down for even 5 minutes and do this. Just breathe in and then breathe out a little longer. And when you breathe in, you can breathe from the diaphragm, the picture shows us here. Your belly should be going out when you breathe in. And we'll be going back in when you breathe out. You want to be ventilating your whole lungs, not just breathing from up here. This is not only relaxing, but it's de-stressing. So we breathe, and then we breathe out a little bit longer than we breathe in. 5 minutes, and then check your blood pressure. You will find your blood pressure has gone down. People that do this on a regular basis, that will continue to do this like 15 minutes a day, every day, can get off their blood pressure medicine. It will actually change, make a physiological change.
Sorry,
and we can get off of our slide medicine. So breathing, hugely important. And I'm going to teach you one more quick thing, and that is something called alternate nostril breathing. And that's simply where you breathe in through one nostril and breathe out through the other, and then breathe back in through the same nostril and out through the other. This balances the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and it will relax you. Especially if you ever have really emotional upset, you're kind of out of sorts, you find yourself being angry or resentful or worried, anything that's emotional, you can balance out instantly with this process. You just breathe in through one nostril, breathe out through the other. Breathe back in through the same nostril, breathe out through the other. Breathe in through the same nostril, breathe out through the other. It's very simple. And just doing this for a couple of minutes, just a few times, you can feel yourself relax. You can feel this. And you'll notice a difference internally. So these are things that are simple that you can do that will help get that parasympathetic, get the brakes on, and get the calming, stress balancing results. Relaxation, get a dog, get a pet. Actually, the studies have been done. I mean, we've shown that people actually feel better, have better heart results, have a better quality of life if they have a pet. See? Or if you're in a relationship, if you have somebody close that you're engaged with, that you're relating to on a regular basis. We are a pack animal. Okay, we thrive when we are hanging out with other people. We like this. It feels good. So we want to find excuses, ways to be in relationship, to have a sense of belonging. And so we have, if we're not married, we have significant others. If we don't have a significant other, we have a group that we belong to, a church, a bowling league, a bunch of old guys that run around in motorcycles and dress up in leather. Civil War reenactment, some group, something that gives us a sense of belonging. This is very important to our sense of well-being.
Last subject. Mind, body, soul, community.
So community, we have this, first the mind, body, soul. The mind and the body are the same thing. They're just two different ways of looking at the same thing, okay? And the soul, what we call the soul, is just the consciousness. It's like we are the ones that are going along for the ride. We are the audience to the adventure of our life. You see, this is behind the scene. We always are what we've always been. We've never changed, even though the outside part changes. We've always been the same viewpoint, the same witness, the same seer. When you look into your eyes in the mirror, the same person is always looking back. The outer part changes, the inner part doesn't, and that inner part that doesn't change, we call that the soul. So that essence of what you are, and the outside part, which is the mind-body, which is one thing, are all together. They're not separate. Okay? So in our sense of community, again, belonging, having a group, a church, an organization, something that we belong to, a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. If you don't have a reason to get up, if you're not fired up about something, then find something to get fired up about. This is an amazing planet that we're on, and there are amazing opportunities to share. You can serve others by just being nice, by listening, by giving a phone call to somebody, visiting, offering your services. Having something to get up about is important. So having a purpose in life, a sense of purpose. And if you don't have one, come and see me after, and I will assign you one. So we're saying here, what screen has our attention? What are we paying attention to? What's important for us? How are we engaging in our relationships? All this, it comes back to the sense of belonging, the sense of feeling connected. We are all in this together. Nobody's out there separate. We are all in this together. And it's important to get that, to understand that. So we talked about meditation, heart-brain communication. We talk about the heart-brain connection, but there is no difference. These are just two different ways. The brain happens to have outposts in the heart and in the gut, big ones. And so when we think about the heart, the brain as being up here, and there's a regulating mechanism around the heart and everyone here, it's all the same brain. It's all the same connective tissue. It's all communicating and interacting, and there's no difference. There's no separation between this. Forgiveness. Again, these are strategies, healthy lifestyle strategies that are really important. If we are carrying around a bunch of upsets, then this impairs with our functioning. This turns on that stress response. That's another way of keeping the gas pedal on. And so we have to learn to let go. Understand that all the problems, everything that's ever happened to us in the past, all the upsets, all the wrongdoings, everything is just a story. has no reality today except the story that you tell yourself about it. That's it. It has no reality except the story you tell yourself. And so if you understand that, you can edit the story. You can allow yourself to forgive those individuals that need to be forgiven, including yourself. By the way, it starts off with you. We carry around a lot of guilt about stuff that we did in the past, and it's like, so what? You know? This did not go on our permanent record. Our permanent record is in our own head. And so you can let it go. Let it go. Forgiveness doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It doesn't give them a free ride. It doesn't allow them to say, okay, it was okay what you did. Forgiveness is for us. It's for changing our consciousness.
In a rehabilitation point of view, I find the patients that do the best, the patients that can incorporate the concept of forgiveness in their injury, their accident. When they can let go of that, stop blaming everybody else for their problems and start looking at trying to create the balance inside themselves, and they heal faster. And they rehabilitate much faster. And that's just a universal principle in rehab.
Which button are we doing now?
And then the last one is the concept of being grateful, which is a really important concept.
Being grateful, and this is something that you will, if you do this, you will find that this will change your life. If you just get up in the morning and you write down 5 things that you're grateful for. You just start a little gratitude journal. You just sit down and write down 5 things that you're really grateful for. And I don't care how far you have to stretch for it, find those 5 things. You start to think in that direction, and you will see more and more things that you have to be grateful for. It will change your attitude, change your viewpoint, and it will change your life. So you can do this very simple thing. This doesn't cost anything. It doesn't take more than a couple of minutes. But if you do it, you'll find that it will change the way you're experiencing your life.
Last, real quickly, when we were kids, DDT was a common thing. It was sprayed all around. We played in areas that were sprayed with DDT. Again, this is the earth flat as far as being a globe. We didn't realize how toxic these materials were. The kids who were playing in this, some of them I've known who had brain cancers, who have developed thyroid cancers. Remember that in the Tom Brown shoe stores, where you put your foot under that x-ray machine? Okay? That creates a lot of thyroid cancer. So we're learning that toxicity is something that is really important. And in fact, we need, even what we buy in a store that we consider safe may be toxic. As Ron said, that bisphenol A, which is the plasticizer in bottles, is outlawed in Europe but not here. There's a drug, there's an herbicide called artane. The communities that use artane in their agricultural systems have a higher rate of diabetes and obesity in those communities. So we just have to be aware of this from crop dusting, and we also have to be careful of microbes, toxic loads that we have. So, in summary, the problem with common sense is it is not too common. So a young kid will say, if I say, okay, what's the difference between 100 calories of Coca-Cola and 100 calories of vegetables? Oh, no, a big difference, you know. Vegetables are, better, and I know I shouldn't drink the Coca-Cola. But if I ask some adults, they say, oh no, a calorie is a calorie, it doesn't matter. I just need to get the calories to get the energy. So we need to get more common sense. So start with good food, and a lot of small meals during the day, food that is actually turned into materials the body can use as opposed to toxic materials. And the other issues that we talked about, lifestyle management.
Lifestyle, health, exercise, relationships, sense of belonging, purpose in life, these are all...
Now, I'll tell you a little story. About 3 years ago, Mark Hyman, who has a practice up in Massachusetts, had a patient named Rick Warren. And Rick runs a Saddleback Church in California. About 40 to 50,000 people join that church. Rick came to see Mark because he was having terrible unremitted back pain. The last time he had back pain was when he did a baptism of about 1,000 of his practitioners, or 500 of his practitioners, and he realized he had a very, very overweight congregation. So he got Mark to put together a team of Mahat Oz and a guy named Mark Amen, came out to his church and put together a program called the Daniel Program. They enlisted 12,000 people from the church into this program and set them up into small social groups of 10 to 15 people per group. Then they tracked along, there was a diet, much of what we talked about today, the fundamentals, and at the end of 6 months, most of the people were off their high blood pressure medicine, they decreased their diabetes medicine, and they felt healthier.
And they lost weight.
They lost weight. They lost about 500,000 pounds. So here's the idea that Ron and I are coming up with. What we would like to do at some point is to create with our local churches a Daniel plan that could be incorporated and integrated into that structure. We're not going to change this world by the medical establishment. That's a joke. That's a lost cause. We're going to change this county and change this world by going through the churches. The churches are where the changes can be made, because that's where you have the small support groups. And that's where people support each other, and that's where changes can be made.
So, whether it's a church or the community center, it doesn't matter, but the important part is to create these groups that are peer-to-peer groups. This is not where we have an administrator telling you what to do. This is where you have people coming together and saying, this is what I'm doing, and this is what's working, and this is what isn't working. This is folks that are showing up like on a weekly basis to help support each other in their own health. And so in order to help facilitate this, and I'm not doing this, Bart's not doing this, our dance card is pretty full. But what we're having is this sign-up sheet out here where we're collecting email addresses, and then we'll have that available, and anybody that wants to step up and facilitate and host one of these groups, we will provide that list, and they can send out and say, here's what we're doing. We're having a support meeting, we're starting this, and you can create your own groups amongst yourselves. I'm offering our church, Wayfarers Unity, is available every night except Monday night, so a group can meet there, free of charge, but you can find your own places and put your own groups together. It just requires that somebody be responsible for coordinating the group. And these small groups, like I said, our friend's, her support group is on Facebook. She said, I commit to doing this, and I'm showing up for my Facebook community, and I'm telling them what I'm doing and reporting, and so I know there are a bunch of people out here that are tracking me that I have to be responsible to. This helps. So whether you do it through Facebook or create your own little subgroups, your own little friendship groups where you can meet once in a while and talk about what's working and what's not working. Okay? What's working and what's not working. This way, we help support each other in creating health and wellness.
And you'll see if you follow these programs, and all I'm really saying is 2 months or possibly at the end 3 months, you will feel a difference. Physically, you'll feel a difference. Maybe you have less medications, you'll physically feel better.
You feel better, and you'll be happier because you feel better. And you'll be easier to get along with. People don't feel good are grumpy. So we want to be happy, healthy, and we want to live that healthy, high-quality lifestyle as long as we can. As long as we have something useful to do to show up on the planet, we want to be healthy and functional and full of energy. And we can do that. We can do that. That's the formal talk. Okay? Thank you all for coming out.